Welcome to Curious Wisdom. I am Kerry Cudmore, and here on Curious Wisdom, I'll be exploring themes of spiritual finance, entrepreneurial badassery, and exploring the grand what if. What if requires curiosity, and that is the essence of Curious Wisdom. What if you are intimately connected with everyone and everything? What if you create your reality? What if everything you do is powerful? What if everything you think, feel, do, believe has impact? What if nothing is random and everything is by your own design? And what if your reality is a reflection of your own inner landscape? I invite you to join me here on Curious Wisdom.
Hey everyone, it's Joey from the Reality Practice Network. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned after the show and find out how you can work one-on-one with your show host as they guide you through this process of ascension. Until then, enjoy the show.
Welcome here, dear ones. I'm Kerry Cudmore, and today on Curious Wisdom, I'll be exploring Spiritual Finance 101. Let's check in to see what it is and how I work with it. So let me give you a little bit of background first. So I had reached a point in my life where my relationship with money was just chaotic. I had piles of unopened bills. I was getting angry calls from creditors almost every single day. My house was in foreclosure. It was pure chaos and incredible suffering. And I hit a point, a really deep, dark point where I realized I had to change my relationship with money, or I was poised to lose everything in my life. And so I started to look around and ask myself the question, well, how did I get here? And I realized that I had not been taught about money in a deliberate way. I had learned about money as if by osmosis, surrounded by, images and ideas and modeled behavior that really created these strong belief patterns that had real impact in my life. But I hadn't even known that I was learning about money. So I stopped to think, firstly, when I think about money, how would I describe it? What are the words, phrases, and feelings I'd use to describe it? And both in my own work and now working with other people, these are some words, phrases, and feelings that people often use to describe money, describing the relationship with money and just money in general in terms like, stress, anxiety, guilt, fear, frustration, confusion, regret, remorse, inequality, greed, corruption, self-judgment, lack, not enough, conflict, the root of all evil, unpredictable, taboo, mysterious, inconsistent, and chaos. Even if, as I describe these words in this moment, my palms feel sweaty, I feel nervous, I feel like my breathing is shallow. And that is how I used to feel in relationship with money. So it's necessary to identify, where am I now? And so I invite you to do that. Identify, where are you now in your relationship with money? Do your own survey. Ask yourself the question, how would I describe money? What are the words, phrases, and feelings I would use to describe money? Get familiar with where you are in your relationship with money. And then next, I did a similar exploration, not thinking about money at all, but really thinking about that word spiritual. And I want to be deliberate here. When I use the word spiritual, when we use the word spiritual in the Spiritual Finance Initiative, which is a nonprofit, by the way, we use the word spiritual to define living our lives according to our values. Living your life according to your values. So when I use the word spiritual here, it doesn't imply any religion or spiritual belief system unless you have one that informs your values. If you do, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Just get familiar with what you value. So when you think about living your life according to your values, when I think of it, the words I use, the words I've heard other people use are descriptions like joy and love, caring, compassion, comfort, authenticity and integrity, wisdom, connection, fulfillment, peace, kindness, calm, confident, happiness, passion, awareness, growth, support, balance, ease, and flow. Do you notice anything different about these two lists? That's what I noticed too. When I did this survey for myself, after picking myself up off the floor and realizing that I had to do something to change my relationship with money, I recognized this disparity between how I described money and how I described my values. I realized that if I had these beliefs about money that were out of alignment with my values, I couldn't have a healthy relationship with money. It was going to be impossible for me to have a healthy relationship with money. So I want you to think about that. Can you describe money in the same words that you describe your values? Can you describe money as comfort, wisdom, connection, fulfillment, happiness, joy, love, kindness, balance, ease, and flow? Or is it very different? If it's different, we've got some work to do. And it does start with this. It starts with identifying, where am I now? It's just like any, good GPS system for navigating in a car or on foot or on a bike, boat, motorcycle, riding an emu. Do people do that? I digress. But starting to look at money from that space of where am I now? Because any good GPS system, no matter what your form of transportation is, needs two things. It needs to know where you are now. Where am I now? Having awareness about that. And then also knowing where you're going. So in this example of identifying where am I now and how I describe money, how I feel about money, that's the start point. That's the start point. And then identifying, okay, so what do I value? What are the words, phrases, and feelings I'd use to describe what I value in life? That's the destination. That's the destination we're aiming for in your relationship with money. We now have navigation. So how do you work with this? It's nice in theory. Yeah, I know where I am. I know where I want to go. But how do you start moving in that direction? So one of the things to think about is, how you learned about money, and to get really specific about it. About, okay, so who did I learn about money from? When did I learn about money? And what did I learn about money? And so I like to do this in a very simple way. And that's one of my values is simplicity. I think in our world, there's so much overcomplication. And what if we can use that KISS acronym and keep it simple, sweetheart, when we think about the relationship with money to get us started? So I start to think about how I learned about money in the environment where I grew up. And I had one specific experience where I learned really impactful and not in a great way lessons about money. I was in about the 4th grade, and my parents were going through a divorce that was just messy and continued to be messy and was never unmessy. And there was a day when at that point I was only able to see my dad about once a week. And so it was Saturday, and I was waiting with great anticipation for my dad to show up so I'd get to see him. And I was waiting at these windows in my mom's house that were kind of up high, and I had to reach and look out the window to see if he was pulling into the driveway. And I'm waiting and waiting with great anticipation, and I'm excited. And he pulls into the driveway. And I'm off like a flash. I'm running to the door. And when I get to the door, my mom stops me. And she says, "Ask your father where the money is." And immediately all of that excitement and anticipation and joy just drained out of my body. And I walked, to the car, which seemed like it was forever. And I got to the car and I said, "Mom wants to know where the money is." And my dad was pissed. He was, I think, angry that I was put in the middle and he didn't have the money. So back I went to my mom's front door and mumbled out the words, "He doesn't have the money." And she blanched. It was like when movies go from full color to black and white. That's what it's like. It was like all of the essence just drained right out of her. And I knew in that moment that this was not money that was frivolous. This was money that had impact. This was money that was important. I imagine it having the importance of the mortgage or the electricity or food, basic needs. And I saw in her suffering. I saw suffering. And so when I think about that very brief interaction that I had in my life, I learned a lot. I learned that money equaled anger. I learned that money equaled suffering. And when I really untangle it, the base of it for me was that I learned that money equaled conflict. And I learned this in a matter of minutes. And when I trace my trajectory forward with money, it all kind of makes sense, because I had started in that moment unconsciously. I had learned that money equaled these things that didn't align with my values, which meant that if I had money, I'd have these things in my life. If I had money, I was going to have suffering. I was going to have anger. I was going to have conflict in my life. And none of these things align with my values. And when I boil it down to the one that really hits for me, it's that money equals conflict. I do not value conflict. I mean, I'll deal with it when it shows up, but I don't live my life with a calling to create conflict. I don't believe in conflict that way. So I realized I needed to change these core beliefs that I had learned unconsciously. And so this is an example, an exercise that you can do, and it's really simple. It's very approachable. And that is to start to go through the memory of your lifetime and start to make up these money equations. Go through your experiences in your life. So for me, the big one for me was money equaled conflict. I look on the right side of that equation, that word on the other side of the equation from money, and ask myself, does that belief align with my values? And if the answer is no, to change it, to cross that out and change it to a word that does align with your values. So for me, it was very simple. When I looked at that belief that money equaled conflict, and I looked at the word conflict, asked myself if it was aligned with my values, the answer was no, it's not aligned with my values. So I asked myself, what do I want to change it to? And the answer was connection. I value connection. I value connection with myself. I value connection with animals and nature and people. Connection that I can live with. If money means having connection in my life, that's great. I value that. Bring it on. And so it's very simple. You go through the experiences that you've had in your lifetime and you think about, okay, so what are the things that I learned? What are the money equations I can come up with based on the things that I've learned? And then start changing them if they're out of alignment with your values. Now, I also learned a lot of things in this survey of my life and learning about money. I learned a lot of things that were in alignment with my values. One example of this is that my dad very deliberately taught me things about work. He emphatically reinforced that you must do work that you love. You must. It's a requirement. He valued it that strongly. And I picked up on that. And that was something he actually directly taught me. You must do work that you love. And so guess what I've done my whole life? I have done work that I love. It's not random. I know where I got that. I got that directly from my father. And so when I look at that money equation, money equals doing work that I love, that I can live with. If it means that when I have money, I'm going to be doing work that I love, that's a yes. I can keep that belief because it aligns with my values. And so I want you to consider that you've been learning about money as long as you've been alive. A good portion of it is probably learning that has been, like that by osmosis, unconscious learning that so many of us have had in relationship with money. And that's okay. But once you bring it into consciousness, you can change it. I think of it like this, once we have awareness, we are in a position of choice. Once we're in a position of choice, we can take action, but it requires, first and foremost, that awareness. And so I encourage you to become your own most fascinating research project, because you're the only one who knows your relationship with money. Once you open your eyes to it and get curious about it, you're the only person who has had the experiences you've had in your lifetime in relationship with money. Even in close relationships, even in families of origin where people were in the very same environment, we learn different things, not just in the home environment, but also out in the world. So I encourage you to expand your survey, start from when you were a very small child and then really expand the survey to encompass your entire lifetime. Think about what you've learned, not just from parents, siblings, grandparents, like the extended family, but also what have you learned from the media? What have you learned from maybe religion? What have you learned from our culture? What have you learned from neighbors, employers, friends, acquaintances? Like, go through like the recollection of your entire life and ask yourself these questions. What have I learned about money and when? And then boil it down into that money equation and then make a decision. For whatever that word is on the right side of the equation, ask yourself, does this align with my values? Yes or no? If it is, keep it, keep using it. It's working for you. If no, cross it out, replace it with something that's beautifully aligned with your values. That's it. Start there, because by bringing that awareness, you're going to be in a position of choice. You are going to be taking action by changing your beliefs to beliefs that are custom tailored with your values. And that's a great starting point. That's your spiritual finance 101 learning for today. Thank you for joining me here. And I look forward to connecting again on Curious Wisdom. Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Joey again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the show. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. We'd love to hear your comments too. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an episode from the Reality Practice Network. As I mentioned before the show, I wanted to extend an exclusive offer to you, the viewers of the Reality Practice Network. For all of you watching this video, you're undoubtedly experiencing an awakening and are searching for more explanation into the experiences you're having. Now is the time to explore who and what you truly are. For a limited time, you can now work one-on-one with your show host. Click the link in the description box below to start your journey, or learn more by going to myrealitypractice.com/ascension and let your ascension begin. And remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today?